Good evening and welcome to Alan's Italy. Tonight we are going to a town in the most northwestern portion of Tuscany. And there's a whole story behind it, and I can only tell this story with some visual images. So let me go to that, and that will be very helpful in describing how we wound up in the town of Castelnuovo di Garfagnana. And it's located in an area of Italy, an area of Tuscany, known as the Alpi Apuane. And we first came upon this town many years ago, 2009. And I, in fact, did part of a show, and that's the show over there, show number 33, which was quite a long time ago. We were talking about Western Tuscany, and I mentioned this area, which is really a very mountainous and very beautiful area of northwestern Tuscany. And the story is, well, there's Tuscany right there in relation to the entirety of Italy. And the area that we're going to be looking at tonight is right in this upper left-hand corner over here of Tuscany. And the story is that we were in Cinque Terre in 2009, and we were going to go from Cinque Terre to Lydia's house. I think this is a better map. Let me look at this map. This is really a much better map to show you what's going on. But so we were up here, just past Carrara, on the Ligurian coast, and we were coming down this way, and the object was to wind up over here near Monte Catini Terme. Lydia's house is actually in the town of Chiesina Uzzanese, right slightly below it, south of it. But we were coming down here, and I looked at the map, and usually when we visit Lydia, we need to do something before. We can't just get to Lydia at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon because she's not home from work yet. So we need to do something to occupy our time during the period that she's at work, and it gets home usually around 7 o'clock. So we decided, and I looked at the map, and I said, well, here are the places we could visit. We could visit Carrara, which is famous, has been a famous marble quarry for thousands of years. But I realized that there was an area here called the Alpi Apuane. And there are some beautiful towns right along here. Like, for example, Castelnuovo di Garfagnana, Borgo, Borgo, Mozzano, Bagni di Lucca, and we could, pick one of those towns and go to it. So we're coming down this way, down the autostrada actually, and we got off the autostrada at the town of Massa, and we began to find our way through the mountains east towards Castelnuovo. And this is the story of how that took place back in the year 2009. So we were staying in the town of La Spezia, and we got in our car and began driving south, as I indicated. In that car, I think that was my Fiat 500, which was not one of my favorite cars. And you're going into the mountains, so who knows what could happen. But it was automatic, and we shouldn't have problems. And this is the town of Massa, which is right on the coast. And we were going right in the direction you're looking now, into the high mountains. And you could see that they're very, very high mountains. This is an internet picture of what I thought was possibly the marble of Carrara. And we're not sure whether it was or it wasn't, but Carrara is definitely in that direction. But we began to climb the mountains, and climbing the mountains, we passed some really magnificent little towns and beautiful mountain scenery. It was it was a very, very beautiful day. It was the middle of January. Very important to this story is the fact that it was the middle of January, but it was a very crystal clear day, as you could see. And the higher up we went, the more we began to see the white that, Laura kept saying is the snow-covered mountains. I kept saying it was the marble of Carrara. But we passed some really beautiful little towns and some really magnificent scenery. And somewhere along the line, I began to realize that we were indeed going up to an area that was, that had some snow recently. And it didn't look too bad. The roads, as you could see, looked pretty good. The sky is blue, as you could see. But on the other side of that tunnel, we began to see more and more snow on the side of the road. And in fact, we saw ice and snow encroaching on the roadway, making the roadway even more narrow than it already was, as you could see. And I was getting very, very nervous because we were nowhere near Castelnuovo. In fact, we kept seeing signs, and we saw a sign that would say Castelnuovo 10 kilometers, and then we'd go another 15 or 20 minutes and we'd see a sign that said 15 kilometers. And the reason for that is we were actually going, towards the town and, winding back and forth, and we wound up being actually behind where we were originally. And I was getting very nervous. When we got to this exact point, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore and I wanted to turn around and go back. So I chose this spot, which was not a great spot, because any one of the rather, carefree Italian drivers could come around that bend that you see up there up front and smash into me. But I made a very, very fast U-turn, and we began to go down the mountain. And this is the video that I have, the only video I have, which describes the road, the ride that we took going down the mountains, with Laura and I having a discussion on what was going on. So, Ellen, when you're ready.
Okay.
With sound. Here we go.
Okay, we are on the ride of a lifetime. Very scary.
Hairpin turns is the one we're now making. This is a hairpin turn.
Snow mountain. Snow.
Want me to stop and you can roll down the window so you can see the mountains better? No? Doesn't make a difference?
Doesn't make a difference because the snow will be, the sun is blinding over there.
It's still going as we're speaking?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is, keep it going.
Okay.
I'd like to put in a little word here.
Yes.
We were trying to get to Castelnuovo di Garfagnana. The Garfagnana mountains, Lucas said they were hills, but now I'm going to have a little discussion with him about that. These are mountains, very high mountains, probably about 7,000 feet, and we had to, we made it, I would say, about 1/3 of the way to Castelnuovo di Garfagnana, and then we stopped and came back, mainly because the road was icy. There was a lot of ice and snow, and it was more and more, and we hadn't reached the top yet, so I was just afraid that there was, when ice scares me, riding on ice, so we decided to turn back the other way. I got a little too nervous. Laura's taking the picture. For some reason, Laura's been as cool as a cucumber. And I could only attribute that to her confidence in me as a driver. Either that or she just has nerves of steel.
I wish we could stop right here. Look, sort of.
Yeah, we're on another one of those hairpin turns. Are you still doing the video?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm stopped.
Okay. Am I back? Okay. So that was the ride down, not the ride up. The ride up, we did not take videos of it. The ride down, we decided, I was completely relieved by the time we were headed down because then there was no snow. Anyway, we wound up back in the town of Massa. That's what you're looking at now. And we continued to Lydia's house, and that's Lydia's street, and she lives in one of those houses. And that was the end of the story. Then in the year 2014, which is this past year, in May, we visited Lydia. And once again, we decided, when we visit Lydia, we usually put ourselves in her hands. This particular time, the object was to get back to Lucca, where we had been the day before, to drop off the car, and then Lydia would drive us north to Castelnuovo. So, once again, we got on the road. This time, I was driving and Lydia was driving her car. So I was driving behind Lydia, following her lead as we drove into the town of Lucca. Not really into the town, but to the outskirts of the town, where we dropped off the car, got into Lydia's car. I breathed a sigh of relief. I sat in the back of the car. Laura sat in the front with Lydia, and off we went. And here's what happened. Okay, so here's Lucca. Here we are in Lucca. We dropped off the car. I wanted to go to Castelnuovo because it's been kind of, festering in my mind ever since 2009. So for 5 years that I wanted to get back there. So we went from Lucca north along this road. And the first place we stopped is Borgo e Mozzano. And then I'll show you, why we stopped there in a moment. And then we continued on to Castelnuovo. And we'll talk about that as we go on. So the first thing we come to is something called the Ponte della Maddalena, which is really known as the Devil's Bridge. And that's what you're looking at now. I can make that a little larger, as a matter of fact. So let me do that. This is called the Devil's Bridge. Now, I did research. I always do research on things I'm not completely sure about. And it's located in the town of Borgo Mozzano. It was built in the 11th century, restored in the 14th and the 19th century. But this is not the only Devil's Bridge in the world. In fact, there are dozens and dozens of Devil's Bridges all over Europe. So this is just one of the many, many Devil's Bridges that there are. And they don't all look like that. They look like different things. And, nobody is too sure how they got the name Devil's Bridge. Some of them say that the bridges were very difficult to build. Some of them span waterways that are a bit treacherous. So, nobody is really sure where it got the name. But that's what it looks like. We could not take a picture from this angle because this angle was taken obviously by people who were in a boat. So we didn't have that ability. But we did take a picture of the three of us. Somebody took this picture. And this is what it looks like being on top of the bridge, looking towards the north. That's the view we had. That's Laura, Lydia, and I. And this is, the scenery was spectacular. Beautiful stone houses. That's, when we're off the bridge, walking to the top of it, that's what the bridge looks like from the western side of that river or creek. And this is again looking north, and you can see it's just beautiful scenery. This is, remember, in the middle of May, so we're completely, free of having to deal with snow. This is a view from the bridge looking directly north up that river. And then we got on the road and headed for the town of Castelnuovo di Garfagnana. And this is the town. And, it's surrounded by mountains. And here's a little bit about the town. The name Castelnuovo is an Italian name, of course. But in English, Castel means castle, Nuovo means new. So it's the new castle or the new fort. And the local economy of this town is based on the production of cereal, believe it or not, and chemicals and textiles, some heavy industry, and they deal with chemicals and textiles. The name Castelnuovo di Garfagnana was first mentioned in the 8th century. Now, it's called Castelnuovo. It's not just called Castelnuovo because there are many Castelnuovos all over Italy. But because it's located in the Garfagnana Mountains, it gets the name Castelnuovo di di Garfagnana. From the 14th century on, it was a property of Lucca, which is, maybe 30 miles south of Castelnuovo. But along the way, it was conquered by many, many different groups of people. The Estes, the famous Este family of Ferrara, the Duke of Urbino. It was conquered by Florence, and most recently, it was conquered by Napoleon in the 19th century. And this is the town. And you see a very interesting site over there on the left side, a phone booth. You don't see too many of them around. I saw one recently a few months ago when my daughter, I guess it was during the summer because my daughter was here, in Haynes Falls, which is up in the, which is in the Catskills. But you don't see too many of those. It was a lovely town. It was a very quiet, peaceful town, but a workaday town where people are going about their business, doing a variety of things. Very typical of Italian towns. Up and down, you could see the steep grade going off to the right, and the stores. Then there's a better shot of the phone booth. Narrow streets with stores lining the streets. The church right in the center of town, the Duomo. Mixed into the centuries-old Duomo is some modern sculpture and also a market that was going on. You could see the market stall over there on the left side. Some more modern sculpture. In that case, that's the Man of La Mancha by Cervantes. I read something interesting about Cervantes, that they discovered his bones. It was buried in a church in Madrid, and they lost it for many, many. He was buried there in the very early 17th century, and they just found his crypt. So that's very interesting. And there's food displayed all over. And as we walked around, we were getting hungrier and hungrier. And we walked to a spot called the Rocca. The Rocca is like the upper portion of the town which is surrounded by walls. It's not a castle per se, but it's the fortifications. And it's in fact called the Arosto Castle. But it wasn't really a castle as you think of it. It was built in the 12th century, and we decided to spend some time here because it was a very beautiful location with magnificent views of the countryside. And you could see some of the views right there, with beautiful walkways. And you could see spectacular homes. A very, very pretty town. And it's interesting walking around these ruins, because this is the way, kind of the way it looked like maybe 400 or 500 years ago. But modern touches, like, for example, graffiti all over the walls. And back into the main part of town, and we were getting very hungry, could not find a place to eat, oddly enough. And eventually we came upon this place, and it was a bar pizzeria, which is perfect for us because, they have some pasta, they have some pizza. This place was called La Credenza, and, you could see that it's advertised as pizza and primo piatti, meaning, mostly pasta dishes. And it was a very nice place. This was what it looked like from the outside. We didn't eat outside because it was a little chilly in the mountains. But we were looking forward to some really great pizza. And this was Lydia's pizza, which, you know, I'm not really that interested in. This was my pizza. This is called Pizza Margherita. And it's basically just plain pizza as you would get, you know, in the United States, with just, you know, cheese and some red sauce on it. And let me tell you, this was Laura's, which is Pizza Gorgonzola, which is, you know, was amazingly good. The pizza was one of the best we had ever eaten. And we decided to, you know, take some more photographs of the place. And the owner told us that all the pizza is made in that oven. And then, you know, we got into a conversation with the owner. He's the fellow on the left. And the fellow on the right is actually also the owner, and that's his father. And they were very friendly, nice people. The fellow on the left told us he was actually planning on moving to the Bronx soon, so we found that very interesting. And, you know, we spoke to him for a while. And he told us, and, you know, Lydia said to him, listen, we'd like to see some beautiful sights. Where can we go? So, you know, he told us to go up to the very top of, you know, go outside of the town and follow signs to the Fortezza, which is an actual fort outside of town, and also to another little town by the name of Eglio-Sassi. So, you know, I said to Lydia, you know, try to find them. If you can't, you can't. You know, I got to see Castelnuovo, but off we went, and we found the Fortezza. This is called the Fortezza di Montalfonso, which was built in the 16th century, but some of the foundations are actually from the 12th century. And we walked around the Fortezza amid some really, really spectacular views. And you could see that it was an overcast day. It was a very nice day, but it was, you know, it was blue skies dotted with clouds. And as the day wore on, it got, you know, more and more cloudy. And just absolutely spectacular views of northwestern Tuscany. This is all northwestern Tuscany, the area known as the Alpi Apuane. There's a shot of Laura, you know, as we were walking around the battlements, and me over there on the left with Lydia on the right, just kind of walking around and enjoying the scenery and the beautiful day in May. Lydia then drove back down to the town of Castelnuovo and decided to find the town of Eglio-Sassi. And, you know, you look on the signs, and none of those signs had the name of the town. Somehow, some way, through asking people, some of the townspeople, and using her instincts as a very, very good native Italian driver, she began driving back up the mountain, but going towards the west. So we were headed in this direction, back up into the mountains, as you could see, and we came upon the town of Sassi and the town of Eglio. And the town itself is not known as, you know, separate Sassi and Eglio. It's known as the town of Eglio-Sassi. And this is exactly where it's located. So here we were in Castelnuovo, and we didn't take this main road or that main road, but we went through some road, and the town is right over here. If you can see where the pointer is, it's off to the left of the dot that's marking Castelnuovo, and it's the town of Eglio-Sassi. And we had to get to that town, and you could see that we then had to go back and then down this way to get to where she lives over here. So off we went. And Lydia drove on some very windy, narrow, steep roads that I would never have gone on. And all I remember is as we were going up the road, I kept saying to Lydia, Lydia, turn back. I don't want to go up here. And Laura kept saying, keep going. And Lydia was, interested in going up also. And this was the most windy, steep road I've ever been on in all of my experiences driving, either alone, with Lydia, or with Luca. So this was like a really amazing ride that we took to get to this place. And eventually we wound up in a really, really amazingly charming town. And this is the town of Eglio. This is not the town of Sassi. Even though the two towns, I'll show you the relationship between the two. There's like one on one mountain peak and one on a mountain peak that's maybe 300 or 400 feet away, but they call the town Eglio-Sassi. And this is Eglio. And you could see how utterly beautiful this town is. In the meantime, as I'm putting this show together, I'm trying to come up with some things that I could say about the town. And there is not much. I did a Wikipedia, which, did not exist for this town. I just was on the internet for quite a while and could find very little. However, there is an Eglio-Sassi Facebook page. That's all there was. And from that Facebook page, I came to the conclusion that the town was first built in the year 849. So in the 9th century, this town was built. It was first mentioned in official documents in the year 952. It was taken over by Luca, as was, Castelnuovo. And it was, constantly being caught in the middle of feuding families. In this case, it was the Lucchese family and the Este family. And this is what the town looked like. It reminded me very much in some ways of the town of Civita di Bonareggio, which is a show I did, way back in early 2012. Not too many cars, beautiful houses, beautiful streets. Again, not much as you see so far. There's nothing going on here. I think that this was, I forgot what day of the week this was. I could tell you in a minute. I think it was a Monday. So there wasn't much going on. But we just enjoyed walking around. We knew we weren't going to, have anything, to eat here, or, we'd had lunch, but, sometimes we stopped for a cappuccino or a glass of wine or a Prosecco. But this is where we were, in these mountains. The church, somewhere in that vicinity. A panoramic shot. And, after a full day of hiking, we decided to, Lydia and I anyway, decided to just sit on a bench and look at the scenery. And this is, this is what the scenery was, almost. I mean, it was not exactly, but that's what we were looking at. And we finally came across two guys sitting on a bench over there who spoke no English, And Lydia said, would you like to interview them? I said, I'm just too exhausted. But this is what we will, I think this is the view. So Lydia and I are sitting here, and Laura snapped that picture of us looking at this view. So that was pretty amazing. And, I thought I had a picture of what Sassi looked like from Eglio. I hope I put it in, but if not, this is, from this vantage point in Eglio, that's where Sassi was, on another hilltop. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, so I do have it. So from Eglio, we're looking at the town of Sassi. And again, we're just walking around the town. And then on the Facebook page, I found some very interesting local photos. This is a town that has apparently going on a race. And these are the participants in the race. and that's the finish line, the starting line and the finishing line. And, this is not something we saw. We just noticed on the internet that this is what goes on in this town. It's it's a regular workaday town, and there are the people in the race with the town of Sassi in the background, or Elio in the back. I've lost track of which is which at this point, but these are people just kind of milling about. I took this picture off the internet because I was just really blown away by the spectacularness of that building that's right in the center of the picture, with those arches around what appears to be a couple of balconies. And I just thought that this was a really, really, charming looking town. And there are some of the children who were in the foot race. It's a regular Italian town where people are doing their thing. There is also on the Facebook page, or this could be even a separate Facebook page, of the soccer team. And that's the soccer team right over there. So there was, there wasn't much history at all, but there was a picture of the soccer team. Plus, there was this photo. A series of photos that I found taken in the middle of the winter, apparently. I have the date. Nope, I don't have the date. So it was taken sometime in the middle of the winter of, I believe, 2013. And this is what it looks like in the town of Eglio-Sassi, the towns of Eglio-Sassi, in the middle of winter. And I actually Googled the person who posted these photos, couldn't find much, but through Facebook sent her a message which I actually translated into Italian, and I just never got a response. So these are the photos that they put up there. Magnificent winter photos, as you could see. Look at that. So, living in this town in the middle of the winter, I don't know what goes on, and I can't imagine riding up and down those roads. And you could see right there that, the width of this is a main street through the town, is kind of narrowed by that, and there's a car there over on the right, and it's, it's so enmeshed in snow that you would imagine maybe that car is not planning on moving anytime in the near future. And this is a picture, another picture of the, what's going on during the middle of the winter. Pretty amazing. And then, back on the road, and we were going now down the mountain, stopping to take some more photographs of the magnificence. Back to Lydia's house, where I believe the family, either Lydia cooked dinner for us, which happened on 3 of the 4 nights that we were staying with Lydia, or one of the nights we actually had a pizza party in her house with her family present. So, I'm not sure which of the occasions that was, but, we'd like to thank our dear friend Lydia for doing all that driving all over Tuscany, not only that particular day, but also on the 2 subsequent days, which will be the topics of the next 2 shows. So the next show is going to, and I've labeled these next 2 shows A Day Out in Tuscany Part 1. It actually should say Days Out in Tuscany, because the first day we went to the towns of Monte Carlo and Serravalle. And what I did basically was say to Lydia, take us anywhere you want in your area and show us some of the really amazing towns. And she brought us to this town. This is the town you're looking at now is the town of Monte Carlo. And then we go to another town not far from there by the name of Serravalle. And this is part 1. Part 2, I actually gave Lydia an idea that I wanted to go to 2 towns, the town of San Miniato and the town of Vinci, because Laura had never been to those 2 towns. So this was the day that Lydia kind of picked these two towns. They're magnificent towns, and they will indeed be the subject of the next two shows. So that is show number 107. Whoops. Oh, now I did it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Castelnuovo di Garfagnana. Hope you enjoyed it. And for now, buonanotte e buona fortuna.